Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Technocratic Podcast. Today, we welcome my friend Hugo Borda, software architect and CTO. Hugo is actually our first repeat guest. We had a conversation with him back in September, and a ton of people tuned into that conversation, so we thought we'd do it again.
Mhm.
It's really nice to have you back, Hugo.
Thank you, Owe.
Absolutely. This time I thought we would dive into one specific topic. Hugo is a practitioner and researcher in the area of the Internet of Things, or IoT as it's known. So today we'll dive into the current state of IoT, its various applications, challenges, and what's next on the horizon. How does that sound, Hugo?
It sounds excited. Happy to share what we have been doing and where the market is going.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time to be in that space.
Absolutely, no question about it. And as always, I've got my trusty sidekick, Mishka McCown, with me to help to facilitate the conversation. And we'll just jump right into it with the first question, which I'm not even sure if I can fully explain IoT to somebody completely new to the field. Hugo, you're obviously the expert here. How would you kind of frame it to somebody who's never heard of it before, but maybe is technology or product oriented?
Yeah, it's a good point, Bobby. Usually, when you have to talk, depending on the audience, it is always nice to use examples. Is once you use like four or five, people start putting the concept together. And there are so many industries, and you can apply it
Yeah.
to anything that you wanted to. That basically IoT, like it says, Internet of Things, is a set of technologies, really a set of technology. You can dream it, um, that you can put it together. The only that you have to let is your imagination fly. Pretty much everything is feasible, right?
Hmm.
Probably people hear terms like smart tracking, like track
Yeah.
something, and we will go in
Right.
details, or a smart metering, or a smart
Hmm.
building, or a smart manufacturing, smart
Right.
cities, smart energy. In reality, probably people are using IoT every day without they knowing that they are
Hmm.
using it, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
basically,
Exactly.
putting together a bunch of devices
Yeah.
that they connect to things and they allow, particularly in the business space, to be much, much efficient than what they were in the past.
Yeah. I thought of IoT always just, I had this image in my mind of like the smart refrigerator and the smart doorbell and, things like that, like a very consumer oriented definition of it. But the reality is that IoT is consumer and it's business. There's a lot of IoT that's happening in business too, right?
That's right. That's right. For example, let me give you a few examples for the audience to grasp the concept of IoT. Imagine that you were to have a hospital, right? Nurses are dealing with death most of the time, and it's like they
Mm-hmm.
need something now. So hospital got these things that are mobile devices, right? From baby monitor to something to do an echo or to do an X-ray. The thing is for those nurses is where those devices are, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we did really real life projects in hospitals where each of the
Yeah.
devices has something called a tag, and then through a bunch of technology that we will
Right.
go deeper on it, you are able to tell those nurse through an app that you deploy where the
Mm-hmm.
device is. Sometimes it's a few feet from where the person is. Sometimes it's in the
Right.
floor above or the floor below.
Right. That's a
But
perfect example.
in a
Yeah.
matter of seconds, that person will find out that. The other that is a very
Mm-hmm.
common and resonate with people is in the construction space. Imagine that you are building a high rise and all of a sudden you are in floor 25, you need
Yeah.
an electrician. In the old days,
Right.
that was a difficult task to try to figure out where in this big construction site. But if you were to put a tag in the hard hat of that particular person,
Mm-hmm.
you will be able to say,
Yeah.
so there is an electrician 2 floors below or 3 floors higher up,
Right.
and you just go and you find the person,
Hmm.
right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I've looked at a few investments in the IoT space, and one of the things that I was waiting to ask you about is, so you have IoT, Internet of Things. It's bringing the internet, or technology accessibility, if you will, to all sorts of devices, personal devices, devices in businesses, manufacturing, and so forth. How pervasive is IoT really getting today? Is it everywhere, or do you feel like, as an expert on this, do you feel like there's still a ton of room to grow? There's so many things to make smart, or how do you think of like how much market coverage has happened for it?
It is everywhere, and it's gonna go
Mm,
everywhere. In
mm-hmm.
reality, when you put two and two together and you see the efficiencies that you can
Right.
gain from it, imagine that
Yeah.
you want to be the executive of some major office, and at the moment that you park the car into your parking spot in the garage, all of a sudden the lights, the heat, the air condition light up in your office.
Hmm.
So you are saving energy. At the same time, you are gaining the energy, and when you get it there, you also pop up into the roster of people
Right.
that are in the office, right? And all of a sudden, the elevator is coming down to the basement because you will need it to go up. And
Right.
then you just need to use your imagination. And now you start hooking
Hmm.
events. The amount of
Yeah.
things that it could happen, right? It could be an announcement to people in different positions that you just got to the office, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so it's just the efficiency. It's just amazing, the thing that the
So,
device.
so you think that's a IoT has kind of proliferated pretty extensively. Is there any industry, like you gave the health tech industry example? That's a really good one. Is there any industry where it hasn't gotten into yet, or it's everywhere now?
It's everywhere, including the industries that you don't want to talk about it or you cannot talk about it, right? There are
Hmm.
different networks. Um, Many people get nervous about the IoT network. Well, you separate it from the company, but you can make it
Mm-hmm.
equally as safe. The other is today in IoT, you don't have the dependency of the IoT resource, the IT resources of that particular company, right?
Mm.
So the thing that you should picture in your mind is that you have
Yeah.
two networks side by side, the corporate one, the IoT one, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
cross. So in reality, a bad actor through the IoT cannot get to the main network. They
Mm.
run side by side. And the other is in IoT, when I say you got a set of hardware, you also have a set of networks. All
Right.
of a sudden, you may have devices that talk Bluetooth, or devices that
Yeah.
talk LoRa one, or
Mm-hmm.
devices that talk Zigbee, or 4G, or 5G, or LTE.
Mm.
And the good news, Bobby, is you can bring all of them together into a common solution.
Mm-hmm. Do you count wearables under IoT?
Right. Is Imagine that you were to be in some major manufacturing company, and like I was telling you, you can put tags on people's hard hat.
Mm-hmm.
You can put all kind of devices on humans. You can put. Imagine this: if you were to have forklifts, right? Is you got a major floor plan that you got massive amount of
Right.
square foot, and the main thing that you have to keep with IoT is batteries, right? So
Mm.
usually, if you have devices that they're not connected to a cable, you have to be sensitive how many how much energy you're going to spend for every single byte that you're going to be sending,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have to
Yeah.
keep that payload small, and the frequency um, is important for some of them. But
Yeah.
when you have devices like forklifts that they got their own power, the game is totally different, right? Because in a
Right.
forklift, and I done it, you can have cameras. I don't know
Mm.
if you're familiar with LiDARs technology,
Yeah,
but
sure.
LiDARs are these little sensors that measure distance. And for
Mm-hmm.
example, you can just say when the forklift is approaching, based on the LiDAR, you can wake up a bunch of devices that are doing things. Imagine that you were to
Mm-hmm.
have cameras that are
Yeah.
reading barcode or QR codes as the
Yeah.
forklifts approach. And then based on that, it does something. The other
Mm-hmm.
is when you have devices like forklifts, you are into a brand new space that is the computer on the edge, right? In the
Yeah.
old days, the devices were responsible for sending data to kind of mothership where the data is coming in and is
Mm-hmm.
massaged and blend. But when you have devices like for example, the forklift or cars or any of that they got
Hmm.
their own power, you can do a lot of the processing at the edge, and then what you send back to
Oh, yeah.
the big servers are results, but not the traffic, right?
Hmm.
The other is sometimes you may have devices
That's really cool. Hmm.
when they move inside a facility. You might have pillars, you may have columns, you may have devices with water, and the waves cannot go through. So,
Mm.
in reality, what you need to plan is for those things to collect the data. And then, when they are able to
Yeah.
communicate, to offload the data that they collected, right? That is
Yeah.
already more than invented in how do we do that kind of manipulation. So, in
Hmm.
reality, or I don't know, imagine that you have a massive warehouse and you were to have 5G inside that massive warehouse,
Hmm.
but in some places the technology doesn't reach those difficult corners. So as the devices start becoming available into the network, now the devices
Yeah.
are offloading the data that they collected, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's basically anything you can imagine. I mean, it's such an incredible amount of applications and use cases that you can think of. How big do you think this industry is now? Like,
It's huge.
if
It's huge.
you,
If you were to
yeah.
see Shenzhen, a city in China, that is a
Mm.
paradise for IoT people. You pretty
Hmm.
much have a device to do anything that you wish, that you want, that you will
Yeah.
want, and if they don't have it, they will make it for you, right? If you have enough
Wow.
business
Yeah.
case. But in
This is
reality,
Zen in China. Wow.
yeah,
That's really
you got
cool.
devices that are as tiny as you can imagine,
Yeah.
to devices that are big, to
Right.
computers on the edge, cameras. Bobby, you will be surprised. Um, the quality, the speed of the
Mm.
capture, the
Hmm.
frames rate,
Right.
um, and the quality of those things. And they are industrial quality camera, right?
Yeah.
These are not
Yeah.
the little plastic that are fragile.
Sure.
So
Amazon. Yeah.
yes, and the other is you have to think. Imagine, I don't know if you're familiar with companies like Williot or other, but they got paper
Hmm.
tags, right? So it's
Okay.
not even a piece of plastic; it's a piece of paper.
Ah,
It's a
that's
piece of
cool.
paper
Yeah.
with a circuit board glued to it. So you could have a
Yeah.
medicine bottle with a paper tag, and then
Hmm.
as the bottle is moving through conveyor belts, you are able to get the data. Now, I
Right.
just mentioned to you, you got a piece of paper and you got a circuit board integrated on it. And you say, where do you put the battery? Well, they don't have battery, Bobby. They got capacitors. So as
Mm.
the as the bottle is coming, these devices that they got a source of energy, the source of energy hit the bottle, the capacitor charge, and the tag is able to talk to you for a few milliseconds, microseconds, right? And then it disappears. But
Hmm.
now you don't have devices into that. Many times when you go to a mall and you buy a piece of clothes and you want to go through the exit, you
Right.
might wonder, RFID, yes, is one of those technology
Hmm.
and IoT is being used, but the other is you have these new tags that are rechargeable, right, for a
Yeah.
few seconds, but they are
Hmm.
used in unbelievable spaces. They are unbelievable cheap, right? If you buy it for
Hmm.
large quantity, it's in cents, not in dollars, in
Yeah.
cents. So you can buy a
Hmm.
large number. Um, like in my car today, for the place that I work, I got a tag that is on my headlight. So as I am approaching the
Okay.
road, the energy charged the things, and the entire gate open up, and this and that. And
Hmm.
I go inside without me doing anything, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so you start
Did
doing
you set that up yourself, Hugo?
that. No, no, but
Okay.
is a, like, for example, we were working with a biomedical company, and I
Yeah.
don't know if you know, but many times probably you wonder, when a piece of medicine get recalled, how that happened, right?
Hmm.
And what
Hmm.
happened is the manufacturer of that medicine got sources of medicine to make the ultimate medicine. And what they really need to know is that if this container was contaminated, everything that they make from that container is
Hmm.
contaminated. And because of that,
Right.
sometimes the news or something else is going to say all the medicine that end up in 007, right? And if you wonder
Yeah.
how all that work together, well, you just figure it out. In reality, we have all the barcode and QR code of all the containers that participate in making this medicine, and it's very easy from this medicine when somebody discovered that they got something bad to know where it came from, and then
Yeah.
you got the association of the code.
That's really cool. Yeah,
It's
that's a
really cool.
great use case of it. What in your mind has changed in IoT in the last 5, 10 years? What's been the biggest change
It
for
is
you?
always
Maybe something to do with COVID or that
no.
accelerated it or no? Hmm.
It is always the same thing, Bobby. Is we want to do massive amount of work from the technical point of view, and technology is the one that's allowed to go there
Yeah.
because for some reason it didn't catch up, whatever the reasons are. But for
Hmm.
example, when 5G came to the market, and now you could have private 5G inside a warehouse, well,
Right.
the opportunities open up tremendously about what we can do. So in reality, what it has changed, I would say, is in the last 5 years, 5G. I put 5G
5G.
as a
Hmm.
as a one of
Yeah.
the changers on the space that
Yeah.
allow us to do things that we couldn't do.
Why does 5G get such a bad rap though? There's so much negativity around it. Like it
It,
didn't live up to its hype or something.
and well, that is the thing. Is look at what happened with AI, and we talked in the past. It's the same. Is
Hmm.
the technology is coming, the hype goes really, really high, then people
Yeah.
lower it down to what the technology is there for.
Realistic.
Then
Yeah.
yeah, then we settle down, and now we got a common ground. But every time that the new
Right.
technology is coming, and the other is you have to think many times when the people create the technology don't have all
Hmm.
the use cases, right? And
Right.
then when people see the technology, they want to benefit for their use case, and probably not there yet for those people. And so that
Hmm.
is what the bar rep is. But I do believe that 5G and even the one coming up, 6G, um,
Yep.
is going to make things even better and better and better, right? But
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
limitation is traffic and speed, right?
Hmm. Yeah. What is, in your view, the most exciting industry or the stuff, the kind of use cases that really get you going in terms of all this IoT stuff?
Well, it all depends how do I wake up that day, right? Is
Hmm.
if that day I become where I want to help humanity, well, things on
Hmm.
healthcare really passionate me about that day. Um,
Healthcare. Yeah.
but in the next day is industrial IoT. Bobby, I work with robots, cameras, lidars,
Right.
forklifts, and I have to tell you, every time that you go to those massive warehouse and
Yeah.
anything that you see, you know that it can be automated, right?
Yeah.
Imagine, imagine a truck that you're gonna load it, and you wanna load the
Hmm.
truck in order so it can be offloaded, but you wanna go with the camera and the forklift inside the semi when they are loading the things, and then you can see
Hmm.
the face, and then you can have AI, right, to try to figure it out which
Right.
how high the track is and what you can put here on top, what you can put here on the side, right?
Yeah.
We were doing
Right.
things like, for example, the different bays got numbers on the top, right? Like bay
Yeah.
27 and 17. And sometimes the numbers make up a little bit of dirt, or the angle of the piece of paper
Hmm.
is not
Hmm.
perfect for the camera to read it. And then some
Yeah.
of the engineers that were in the team, they apply DL, deep learning, and then they were able to increase tremendously the accuracy of reading the little piece of
Yeah.
paper that it was in the door that before it was getting a few miss on the reader, right?
Yeah.
So in
Yeah.
reality, you can apply
That's really cool.
AI, ML,
Hmm.
DL, robotic, cameras,
Hmm.
lidars. You take all that technology and put it together.
Yeah.
Then you put a little compute, right? That is a computer, but it doesn't have a keyboard, it doesn't have a mouse, it doesn't have a screen. And then you can compute on the forklifts. Imagine this: you are optimizing a warehouse floor plan, right? Sometimes
Hmm.
you don't realize that because the space is not so wide, only one forklift can get on into the aisle, right? If you put the more popular products into that aisle, you may have a lot of
Yeah.
forklifts queuing up because
Yeah.
they can go inside. So all of a
Hmm.
sudden, you can reshuffle where the products are on the floor plan, and now you don't have bottleneck of forklifts, right? The
Right.
other, you don't have
Right.
uh, accident with forklift. If you were to see how the people
Mm,
drive those forklifts, they look like Formula One racers and an unbelievable speed inside the factory, right? Um,
yeah,
and to have that redistribution of the popular products, so you have the maximum optimization. Every company love to have that on their place.
absolutely. Speaking of that, somebody like Amazon,
Mhm.
um, how much are they investing in IoT solutions? Because it must be a huge benefit to them. Like, are we talking in the hundreds of millions or billions?
I don't know those numbers, so I couldn't even start guessing. But it has to be really high up. But a lot of remember that a lot of Amazon and companies like it, they use robotics on the floor. They don't use human, right? So
Hmm.
and if
Right.
the floor is wired to allow the robots to go on top of those highways per se, right? Uh,
Hmm.
and they do things completely different of how other companies do it. But if you were to be on
Hmm.
the trucking industry, where you use forklifts and you use humans, um, the the space is wonderful to help optimize then anything that they need to.
That's really cool. Is that where your research is based? Is in warehouse logistics?
I did a lot of logistics and I did a lot of things on the open space. And when I mean open space,
Hmm.
many times when you are driving in a highway, you may see
Hmm.
I don't want to give you the names of the company, but you may see crates or other kind of big machines put it in a
Sure.
place, and you need to know
Hmm.
if the machines are still there. Sometimes you may have power generators. Sometimes you may have
Hmm.
battery stations that they need to be located into critical places just in case storms or something like that are coming.
Right.
And the other is we did a lot. Imagine that you were to have something that is shipped from Brazil, and then it get into a ship, and then it get into the water, and then it arrive to the US, and then it
Hmm.
arrive and it put into a truck, and then that truck go into a factory. Imagine the
Right.
different waves, right? It's all of a sudden when the thing that you have got into the water, well, there is no cell tower. So for that, you use satellite. And then
Yeah.
when you get to the
Yeah.
port, well, you got devices that are power and they are in the parking lot of that particular
Hmm.
ship. And then it's on the
Yeah.
track. Well, the track got power,
Yeah.
so you can do a lot of things. So it all depends where you are. You switch the technology. So it's very common today
Hmm.
to get IoT devices that are a little more bulkier, but they support many different protocols, right? From the Wi-Fi to the LoRaWAN, to the satellite, to the cell, and the device is smart enough to change technologies when the technology that it chooses is no longer available, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Imagine that also in the medical care, right? You may have
Hmm.
something. Imagine that you have a very expensive device. You are the manufacturer of that company, and you want to put those devices, and now you put it into a truck, and they are going to a hospital, and then in the hospital they get uploaded, and then it get
Yep.
in, and then until you reach the final destination, right? Let me give you the
Yeah.
use case. You are a supermarket. All of us, we have been there. You go to the deli department, and all of a sudden, all the food that go into the deli is coming on trucks, Bobby.
Hmm.
And then those trucks need to offload those carts. And then those carts get into the unloading dock. If you have those
Hmm.
cars in the unloading dock for too long, and now you have the sun hitting them, the food got spoiled. So your best interest is to unload the thing from the truck and to move it inside the supermarket at a good speed so it reaches the fridge area, right?
Right.
So now if you take those cars where all the food is sitting on top of and underneath, you put an IoT device. Now you can
Mm.
track that little cart where it is at any given time. Those
Yep.
cars, they cost money, Bobby. So all
Hmm.
of a sudden, the truck driver, the objective is to offload carts. There is another
Hmm.
truck driver that their objective is to pick up carts. Well, you use
Right.
the same tag that you use to put the car into the fridge now to know that the car is empty and for other people to go and pick it up,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And when you have that
Hmm.
those car costs in the thousands of dollars and you have hundreds of thousands of them, then the numbers are up pretty quickly.
Hmm.
And right, or
Sure.
imagine you are an airline company, All of us, we travel at one point in our life. And underneath the airplane, you have seen, when you sit in the plane, those little aluminum containers where the suitcases get
Hmm.
preloaded
Hmm.
so the flight take off. Well, those containers are moving constantly. So if all of a sudden you went from US to Germany, that container is in Germany, and then from Germany to Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong to
Yeah.
Spain. Now the container
Yeah.
is all over the place. You are the airline
Yeah.
company, and you want to know where those containers are. You don't want to
Yeah.
lose
Yeah.
them, right? So you put little tags, and now you start tracking where those devices are, right?
Hmm.
Make
Yep.
sense?
Makes sense. What are the big companies in your mind that are providing these IoT services? Obviously, there's like consumer companies like Samsung, for example, that has IoT wearables and all sorts of refrigerator, all sorts of consumer things or whatever.
Right.
But are there like top companies that are just really focused on, for example, the logistics space and providing IoT devices for that? Like, are there some examples you can give?
There are. I don't want to run the commercials for them.
Mm.
And I would say China is a large manufacturer of many of these devices, but then
Yeah.
you
Is
have,
China like number one, do you think?
I will put it up there in my
Yeah,
personal preference, and the
yeah,
variety of devices that they have, right?
right.
And the other that you have to keep in consideration is the evolution of processors, right? As the
Right.
processors become bigger and they can do more things, well, they
Yeah.
can support more things. Like, for example, the evolution of Bluetooth. There are
Hmm.
something that is called RTLS, right? Real-time location services. And
Okay.
the thing is, in the old days, we used to do the RTLS outside the microprocessor. Well, when you are in
Hmm.
Bluetooth now, particularly the latest Bluetooth, it got the physics and the math built in on it to try to
That's
allow
cool,
you
man.
to do RTLS. So,
Let me ask you a question about that actually. Did the chip shortage affect IoT
oh yes,
evolution?
oh yes.
Hmm.
The chip shortage affected a lot, but
Hmm.
at the same time, it generated a lot of opportunity, right? Because, for example,
Hmm.
we work with this, well, more than one, but let's go with this car manufacturing company. They did, because they didn't have
Hmm.
the chip shortage, then they couldn't put the radio into that particular car, and the radios were
Hmm.
coming at a different speed, right?
Right.
So still they were making the car, they were taking the car, they were putting in the parking lot, and then when the radios were coming in, then you wanted to know where those cars were that they needed the radio to be installed. So imagine that
Yeah.
now you're a car manufacturing, you cannot make 100% of the car, you make 80% of the car, and you do it, you park it in the parking lot, and then as things are coming in, through IoT, we were able to help you with the logistics of where
That's interesting. Mm.
those devices that you need to go and put the different pieces. But
That's
yes,
pretty cool.
when
Yeah.
the shortage of chips happened, everybody was suffering. Plus,
Yeah.
in China and things like that, you really needed to do magic to work your use case to be high in the productivity, because they needed to choose who were the customers that they did
Hmm.
things for
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah.
You know,
Do you think, let me ask you about innovation and then I'll turn it over to Mishka for some of the challenges around IoT. But with regard to innovation, what's driving innovation in IoT more like the enterprise side, or do you feel like it's more on the consumer side?
I think there is the other space too, right? Is you got the consumer, you got the innovation, and also you have things that usually people cannot talk about it, but you can embed it into use your imagination on people's, on devices, on
Mm.
things that you need to track, right? Parts that you need to track.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in reality, I would say that it's amazing sometimes when you go to these big places, some of the people that are making business decisions don't realize that investing a little bit in technology, how it can help the bottom line and the efficiency of that place. Um,
Right.
so I would say that if it is not driven it more, it's because the people making decisions didn't know about it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a learning curve. But when you start dealing with those executives and you put in front of them that
Yeah.
the use is really endless, they just go crazy, right? Initially, they were
Mm-hmm.
not even thinking, and then they just go. But the thing that I really appreciate was the marriage of AI and ML and DL, and then the
Yeah.
acceleration of hardware. It's usually be surprised that every week there are 2 or 3 devices that before you thought that they will never be invented, and now they are.
Hmm.
And
Right.
they're getting
Do you
smaller.
think that, yeah, I was going to ask about the generative part of AI and whether or not, like, has that really changed IoT a lot? Like LLMs, I know, of course, data science, machine learning has always been involved, but how has generative really affected
I
IoT?
haven't run into any in my use cases where AI
Okay.
generative affected the space, but I ran into plenty where AI, ML, and DL help
Yeah,
accelerate.
for sure. Yeah. Got it. Got it. Um, I think Mishka has a few questions on the challenges around IoT.
Yeah, yeah. Being a more negative person myself, he gave those questions to me. The What do you think about the state of security around IoT? It gets a little
Mhm.
bit of a bad rap in the security community. What's your opinion?
My opinion is, first of all, is you like I was saying a few minutes back, you should never marry your enterprise network with your IoT network. Keep it separate,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, so that it put people at easy a lot, that the security is no longer an issue, right? So if you have this network of devices, and the only that you need is a gateway at the end of the story to try to send the bytes out or to get new bytes in reality, there is nothing that a bad actor can do in that IoT network, right? The other is most of the IoT networks are out; they are not in. So, from the point of view, if you think that you're gonna get control to the network and get inside the place and now start manipulating things, that is probably non-started because you cannot get in. The network is designed to only get out. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I do. And conceptually, what you're saying is that you're using a boundary condition to protect those devices, and saying that, okay, if they're outbound only, I get it, very secure. But what
Right.
about something that needs to receive instructions, like your forklift? It needs to know what to go get,
Mhm.
and in that case, if your network boundary is breached, you have a problem.
But the network bound first is within the facility, right? So imagine that you were to have a 5G network. So
Hmm.
even if you go into the parking lot and you have your phone that support 5G, you cannot get into that network. The 5G doesn't allow you to get in. So I would say that the security that you have in an IoT network is always the same concern that you have with the other security, that it has to be an insider job, but not an outsider job, right? Um,
Yeah, so I find this fascinating because I haven't really delved into it before.
uh-huh.
There's no pivot point where you can come from. Attackers will typically come in, they start from the outside and they work their way in. They pivot from machine to machine, from network to network.
Right.
So if your internal network, let's say your corporate network, is breached, can they then pivot over uh, to your 5G network that's controlling your devices, or
Right.
that your devices communicate on?
Right. They cannot, because imagine that you were to have an air gap network, right? So in reality, it's a network that stay inside there that people only from within can talk. And again, I sorry to say it again, Mishka, but the thing is, if you are an insider, yes, you can get
Mhm.
into the network, and yes, you can get into the forklift. But if you are an outsider, you cannot get into the network, right? At the same time,
Mm-hmm.
if I am in a regular enterprise and I am an insider, I take my
Mhm.
laptop, I take a cable, I put it into a network port, and that allows me to get into the network. Well, shame on the people that enable that port for me to put the cable, right? Um,
Mhm.
the thing that I will seriously advise anybody is don't mix the networks, right? The other is any IT personnel is gonna go crazy about numbers, right? Imagine that you were to have a little device and it's
Mhm.
doing, it's reporting, I don't know, every second. So you got something coming in every 60 seconds. You got that 60 second and you multiply by 24 and you multiply by the number of devices, all of a sudden, literally, you have 134 million things in a single day. right? Anybody in IT will go crazy about what you're going to be doing to their network. But if you have an IoT network first, you define it for that, right? Another thing that we haven't talked yet, there are these network. There is a company out there called WirePass. The thing that WirePass does is reconfigure itself, because sometimes during IoT devices you got tags and you got beacons, right? And the tags, imagine a beacon like a lighthouse, right? And then all the ships see the lighthouse. Imagine that the tags are the ships. So now you have the beacons, you got the tags, and now all of a sudden, a tag that want to talk to the beacon is behind a column and it cannot see it, but this tag can see this tag and this tag can see this beacon. So WirePass network is reconfigured every single time, right? And it got this
That's
thing also
interesting.
called self-healing. So there are these things on
Hmm.
IoT also called multipath. That doesn't mean that
Yeah.
when I talk to the beacon, I went here, but my next trip I go here because something happened in the middle. And the next trip I go this way. So in the multipath, you have the hubs. And then in a multipath is which one is your shorter way to get there. So all
Yeah.
those are things that are only designed to deal with an IoT network. Sorry to bring it here,
Hmm.
Mika, but in reality, is an IoT network got nothing to do with an enterprise network where you use that
That's
network
interesting.
for a purpose.
Hugo, have you seen like major security breaches happen with IoT networks, or
No,
does that not happen? It's
no.
like unheard of.
I
Interesting.
personally never hear about it. Um,
Yeah.
and remember, I've been in healthcare a lot.
Yeah.
I've been on industrial IoT a lot. Um,
Right.
and I haven't seen anything getting into the middle. And it's not
Yeah.
even a concern, right? Um,
Is the security side of IoT very robust and that's why? Or is it because attackers don't care about it enough right now, or mixture of both, or something else?
to me, is there is no business for the attacker to get into an IoT network.
Mm.
Is that network is for some efficiency. Now, if you are tracking something that somebody might be interested in knowing that tracking, that is a different story, right? I don't
Like
know.
criminals or something. Yeah.
No, I put a tag in your
Yeah.
post, right? And all of a sudden, I tracking Bobby through his life, right? Imagine how wonderful would be you are some important shot in some place, and all of a sudden we put a few tag on you, and then all of a sudden there is some kind of revolution in that country, and we tell you don't land the plane, take off and go and land it in some other place, right? Um, so there are all kind of things. I was part of, well, I wasn't part. Let's just put it if I was or if I wasn't part of this. But imagine that you are a high politician in New York, and now you need to go and take the plane, right? Well, there is a way to get out in a helicopter, but if you are in a car, well, there are certain ways only that you can get out from New York. That there are bridges and tunnels, right?
Mm.
And all of a sudden we might have a vested interest to figure it out which one is the more safe route for you to
Right.
take, right? And then we follow you until you really get to the place where you're going to sit on the plane and take off, right? From a building that you were in downtown Manhattan. So use your imagination, Bobby, and I can
Yeah.
tell you that anything is trackable and doable. So will people be interested in getting to that device? But at the same time, I got news, you cannot get to that device. The level of encryption and
Mm.
security are
Hmm.
pretty high up for not allow
Yeah.
regular traffic to get to there. Again, an
Yeah.
insider shop can, but an outsider,
Sure.
almost impossible.
That's fascinating.
Did I answer, Mishka?
Oh, yes. Yep. Now, what about you started to get a little bit into the privacy side of things. So you talked about, maybe tracking Bobby, for instance.
Yeah.
So we know that he goes to get cars with coffee on Saturdays.
Yes.
Um, are there other instances where, how much, I spend a lot of time in my job talking to lawyers about privacy. How
Yeah.
much does privacy enter into what you're doing?
Um, it's a lawyer's dance, I would say, but it's not a technology dance, right? We can do anything that they ask us to do, and then we leave that things really to the people that know how to manipulate words and phrases and policies and statements, right? But it's we usually have the freedom to do the thing with the technology that then we get constricted by policies and politics, right? But I cannot mention the company, but imagine that you were to be manufacturing something, Mishka, and that device in the wrong hands is bad news until that device is coming to the market. For some given reason, you manufacture the device in California, but the brains that are looking at your device are inside MIT, and you want to take that device and you want to send it from California to MIT, and if that device ends up in the wrong hand, would be bad news. And all of a sudden, you want to know at any given time where that device is, including a drawer, inside a desk, inside a building, inside a floor, right? And all that is doable. So done that as well, where you put that tracking into the things, right? There are many things. And on the privacy, I will say that is for other people to define where the boundaries are that we need to follow. But if there are no boundaries, you can follow anything you wanted to.
Got it.
There are stuff like, for example, there are, I don't know if you realize, but many times when you're driving on the highway, you may find out the height of the bridge, right? And you may wonder, why do they put the height? Well, because there are going to be truck on those highways, and then you don't want the truck to hit the bridge. So all of a sudden, you have tags on trucks, and those trucks need to carry something that got certain height. And the other is you are monitoring weather, and now you analyze that there is a tornado coming in, and then you want to reroute the truck, but you want to reroute on routes where the height of the bridge is this high because you don't want the truck to hit the bridge. Because of that, I say just use your imagination, because we have done that as well in how you reroute things through highways based on the height of what they have in the payload. And then to be able to do that, well, you have to track the truck.
That's interesting. So I get what you're saying about security and privacy. I want to get back to something you were talking about earlier, where you talked about sort of the self-healing networks and the sort of the scaling pieces of it. So what are the barriers to scaling IoT solutions? Is there anything standing in your way? Are there things that need to happen to really make this explode, or is it just part and parcel of what you're doing?
I would say that always the limitation is money. If not that it's going to cost you tremendous amount of money, but in reality, if the dollars is not an obstacle, you can put a lot more redundancy devices. You can put a lot more beacons, right? You can put a lot more tags. So in reality, there are no limitations, right? And the other is bandwidth. So all of a sudden, you need more traffic. Well, you know how to increase the network capacity. So in reality, it's directly related to dollars, but all these things, when you put the final cost, you will be surprised how affordable an IoT implementation is.
Hugo, does that mean so I have some friends in the private equity space who are investing in building and manufacturing companies. And a lot of these businesses are like in the Midwest. They've been around for 50, 75, sometimes even like 100 years. And most of them are still doing their warehouse logistics in the exact same way they've been doing it forever. Maybe a little bit of modernization, but not much. And the culture is very much like anti-technology too. It's just like such a legacy kind of business.
Right.
If you're a private equity investor into a company like that, what's your advice on how to help those companies start to adopt something like IoT in their warehouses? Maybe it's like, manufacturing company of synthetic lumber or something like that. What should they do?
I think that they should be perceptible to do the same better. Right? The reason that you have success doing it that way, that doesn't mean that there is no way to do it better. We talked about this in the past. There are hundreds of ways to do the same thing. But imagine that you bring up this company, regardless of where they are, Bobby. Imagine that you are making trailers. I'm trying to make something that it doesn't relate to what I've been doing. But you're making trailers, and to make a trailer, you buy the tires from China, you buy the axe from France, you buy the cable that you're going to connect all the light from China, you buy the lights from, I don't know, Spain, right? And the thing is, when you have all the pieces, all the parts, then you're going to start making that batch of trailers, right? Well, China, France, Spain don't send you the stuff at the same time, right? It's coming in batches. And then you have a massive warehouse. I work in places where you can imagine millions of square foot is just a warehouse to store what the other warehouse is going to make, right? Instead of have a little shelf, you have a big shelf.
Right.
And the thing is coming in and it's being parked in places, right? All of a sudden, through the people in the admin department of company, you realize that you have your 7,000 tire and you have your 3,000 axe and you have, and because of that, you can make your 300 trailers. But the thing is, when you go to that massive warehouse, you says, where do I have the tires for this trailer and where do I have the wires for these trailers and where do I have? You put tags into those things and all of a sudden the forklift goes and he pick it up in a second, Bobby, right? Right? Imagine that you want to have the Wheelio tag that I showed you before, or I told you before, and now things are coming, I don't know, into a Home Depot or something like that. It's coming in the boxes, and the boxes get parked into some particular place. Well, now you have GPS inside a building. And so all of a sudden, when you take the box that you saw it passing by and you know what the box got inside, now you take the box, you put it in some kind of a shelf. The moment that you put it over there, everybody knows about it. And then when you're the person looking for it, then it tells you what it is. Do you know what I mean? I participated with drones and dogs. Have you seen the dogs without the head?
No.
The dog, yeah. The dynamic dog, right? The yellow dog. The robot.
Oh, from I've seen some of those videos.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
sure.
if you take that dog and you put it on the head, you put a camera and a LiDAR and a reader and an RFID, and now the dog is walking the warehouse. By the way, that is called you send the device in a mission, right? When the dog got to the end of the factory, now you got an inventory that you didn't need a human being, right? Right? Imagine that you were to have a drone, right? Because the dog walk, but the things that are high on the shelf, you cannot see it with the dog, but you can see it with the drone. So all of a sudden at night, when you close your ship, your business, a drone fly through the ice, picking up all the waves, and telling you where the things are.
Right.
Right?
That's super powerful. Yeah. But it's like any other technology. You have to kind of help these companies understand how it works and like take a first step towards doing a use case in their organization. It's just like adopting AI or anything else, right?
You're going the right way. In reality, that is the evolution. Is first you came out with a POC project sometimes, and then if
Right.
that goes well, you go to a real one, and then as the level of maturity increases, then at one point you got a massive
Yeah.
one.
Hugo, do you think that 6G is going to make IoT adoption even more stronger, or do you think what do you think 6G is going to do to the industry?
It will definitely. Is
Yeah.
if yes, it will. Now I want to tell you something, and this will not fly well with the telcos and the cloud providers, but telcos will try to lock you into a technology, right?
Right.
Into their implementation. It will say, if your device talk on my network, then your device is doing only one hop to get to the server. If you go through an open internet, you might have 5 to 6 hop, which it impacts performance, right? At the same time, the cloud providers will tell you, if you use my IoT solution, then I'm going to give you this. My advice
Right.
to you is be telco agnostic and be cloud agnostic, right?
Yeah.
The technology, Bobby, have been super invented. I don't know if you hear about MQTT, right? MQTT is a protocol to send IoT data, right? MQTT is a protocol that is defined to deal with retransmission, right? So you have the little piece of plastic telling you things, the chances that it's going to succeed, the network is temperamental. So is designed to allow very small payload and to be dealing in a network that is not like an infrastructure network, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in reality, my advice will be divide and conquer. So your first goal is
Okay.
to create a network based on MQTT protocol that is just send the data to the mothership, right? Don't send it through standard protocols.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do that. Use the right one. Once the data arrives, then
Yeah.
there are different technology. I don't know if you hear about Kafka, but it's a massive
Yeah. Sure. Mm-hmm.
technology to try to deal
Yeah.
with the word topics. Well, when you are in
Mm-hmm.
IoT, topics is the thing that you handle every single day. So then if you have a
Yep.
massive cluster of Kafka with, I don't know, a backend of Elasticsearch, with
Mm-hmm.
very, very simple, very popular technologies, with very low investment, you could have an IoT running by tonight. Really.
That's really cool. Yeah. So it
Is
depends on like what's your use case, and the barrier to entries are not that high.
Mhm.
6G is coming. When will 6G be here in your view?
In some of them, it's already here.
Mm.
In trying to prototype it and test it and doing things like
Yeah.
that. Yes.
Yeah.
So
And
I
Hugo,
yeah. Go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
no,
no,
no, no.
no, go ahead. I was going to ask you as we start to wrap up here, we're thinking about the future of IoT and the future of AI, obviously super intermingled together, um, especially the data science and ML part of AI. 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, what is the world we're going to be living in? Because they have, in my mind, back in the 2010s, as a CTO, I started hearing about like wearables, started
Huh?
hearing about IoT being everywhere and every device and stuff. That hasn't really happened yet, in my view. It's happened to a degree, of course. I mean, your smartphone's a very good example of it in a way. Um, but it hasn't like transformed people's lives yet outside of the phone. It hasn't really, in my view. What happens 10 years from now, though? Is this going to continue to accelerate and go crazy, big gains for the next 5, 10 years, or is it going to stay kind of like incremental? What is your thought on that?
My take, Bobby, is for the wearables for the regular human beings, uh, it require market adoption, right?
Yeah,
So you pretty much depend on humans to let you
yeah,
that is something that they like it or they don't. In the technology space, Bobby, we have been going crazy. Is
hmm
not that it's not happening at a light speed. Those people that embrace on it,
yeah,
it's just amazing the thing that are doing that many people don't know about it, right?
yeah.
Um,
Did you? So I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, and the other is it again is the amount of things that we are doing even today is crazy. Um, Now there are companies that they saw that and they jump into the earlier day. Uh,
Hmm.
you got no idea how many things I can tell you. Imagine that I were to put a prosthesis in, I don't know, a knee replacement or a hip. I don't know if you know, but those devices need to go into this kind of an oven to try to sterilize the thing before you get into your body, right? It
Okay.
would be really bad
Hmm.
to put something into your body that hasn't followed that. You put
Yeah,
an IoT, Bobby. So IoT is everywhere. You don't know. Like, it's in medication. It's
it's everywhere. Yeah,
in manufacturing.
but
It's on track.
I wonder if did you see this the other day? Where so I spent the last 3 years in health tech, and I've seen a lot of the technologies you're talking about. Um, But the other day, so I appreciate that it's spreading. But the other day, I saw an article about a potential Apple product on the consumer side that was going to be this like a dashboard for the home. They're going to
Uh-huh.
basically build a giant iPad.
Uh-huh.
And the first thing that came to mind was this talk I was going to have with you, and I was like, I should ask Hugo about this because what I'm wondering is Tim Cook and the rest of the Apple exec team is one of their roadmap swim lanes,
Mhm.
IoT related devices. Do you
It's,
think that
it's
that's
already,
true for
it's already, Bobby.
Microsoft? And yeah,
Imagine about the Apple tag. What is the Apple tag? Is they
yeah,
took, right? So
yep,
and the people on the IoT industry for the consumer, we would really like to have a piece of the Apple space, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, I think that if Apple take the IoT community or Samsung, right, not just Apple, and they bring all the IoT brains, I think that we can
Mm-hmm.
start using the phone as the device that we would really like to use in our implementation and solutions, right?
Right. Yeah, it
If the
makes sense.
companies
Mm-hmm.
they want it for their own, it's gonna be hard to get the brains of the IoT to get it with their space. There is nothing, Bobby, today to try to take a phone and to try to have an sniffer and figure it out if you smell
Right.
drugs, right? There are so
Right.
many things that you can. Today, a phone is a very loaded device. You can put as many little sensors and things on it to do whatever you want. Now we go into
Mm-hmm.
the NISCA thing. Is it
Mm-hmm.
legal, right, that we are doing that? Well, that is the space. But let me give
Yeah.
you another example. I know that we are getting close to the end here, but just to get you thinking, have you seen the 3D glasses? So our glasses are
Yeah.
like this,
Mm-hmm.
except that are a little bit bigger. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, when I look through here, I see things. So imagine that I were to have a glass, and we done this, Bobby, and this glass is looking at a box. The box is reading through IoT the barcode. The
Right.
barcode make a communication to the backend servers, and now while you are looking at a box, you are seeing what the box got inside, Bobby,
Yeah.
without doing
Mm-hmm.
anything. Just the reason that you are looking at it, right? The glass see the barcode, it does a query to the inventory, it's coming back and
Mm-hmm.
it display here on this glass what the box got
Yeah.
inside. It
Yeah.
does sound like a dream to you.
Exactly.
Well, I
That's an
don't know.
amazing example. Yeah.
And those
That's
devices,
super cool.
the phone you program in Java, right?
Yeah.
There are many
Yeah.
companies making
100%.
these phones.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. I've got a use case for you. I just want like a robot at home that goes around and waters all my plants when the time is right so that I
well,
don't have to, I don't have to do
like,
it.
like like I told you, there are robots today doing inventory, so I imagine it's not hard at all
It's
to.
not hard anymore. I
I
have a
invite you to
friend of
do
mine,
that.
actually my ex-boss. Yeah, go ahead.
I invite you to do that because the robots got something. It got an operating system, right, on it, and you
Yeah.
will be surprised how easy it is to write a
Yeah. I
piece of
mean,
code in
image
whatever language.
recognition is amazing. I mean, robotics is amazing. We're living in some crazy times. I was going to tell you that one of my ex-bosses, the CTO guy, He um he built some of these types of things at home like 10 years ago. I can only imagine what the advancement right now, and if like these bigger companies like Apple continue to innovate, and of course, the more enterprise kinds of companies, then I think the future is incredible and like unlimited. I mean, you've given us so many examples of use cases here today. It's mind blowing. Like imagine AI, even the generative part of it,
Uh-huh.
combined with IoT and the healthcare, market, like game change. It's just going to revolutionize that industry for sure. Okay, I think we're at the end of our time.
Okay.
As always, it was a pleasure talking with you, Hugo.
Okay. Same here.
I always learned so much from listening to you, and diving into IoT was super interesting, and I'm sure our audience will have taken a lot from the discussion as well. And with that, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you next time on the Technocratic podcast. In the meantime, keep the sharks swimming.